So what we're looking at today is really looking at how we can write things out in expanded form, and then how eventually that's going to help us out. So if I'm looking at this first one, the 5 is not affected by that exponent of 3. The 3 only affects the x because that base is x. 5 is the coefficient. It is written once, and then x is written out 3 times. I do not have to write a time sign in between each x if I don't want to. It's really kind of that personal preference. There's certain times that we'll have to write a time sign, and I'll show you when those would be. So you could choose either one of those would be an expanded form. The second one, because it's in parentheses, that means 2x is my base, and that is going to be written out 4 times. So usually before each number, we're going to have a multiplication, and we could also put those in parentheses. Sometimes that just helps our brains to see each individual piece. They both mean the same thing. But typically with numbers, you want to make sure that we are putting in that time sign so it doesn't look like it's changing our numbers. The last one, really paying attention to where the exponents are. The x doesn't have an exponent. It would have an exponent of 1. The 2 is only affecting the y, so it's going to be x times y times y. Our coefficient is 1, so we don't have to write it. You can. There's nothing wrong with that. And then that is just putting them in expanded form. And expanded form is used just as we're solving to kind of help us out to get to a simplified form, but you need to be able to know how to write those out. Simplifying, I'm now going to just kind of group all my x's together, and I have 3 of them. X times x times x is x to the 3rd. Y times y is y squared. So a simplified form, we typically would do them alphabetically. So since x comes before y alphabetically, we're going to write that first. Coefficients would go out front, and then r squared, and I know it's an r squared because I have 2 r's. When we have numbers in multiple places, we're multiplying, so we're going to multiply 4 times 2 to get 8, and then I'm going to count up how many c's I have. I have 1, 2, 3, so c to the 3rd. On these, we're going to put them in expanded form because that helps us when they're in expanded form to be able to get to this portion here, because I can visually see exactly how many they are, and especially because here now we have 2 groups of x's. So I have 3 x's in the first term, and it's not necessary, but for me it helps just to put those in parentheses to say that's my first x to the 3rd, and then x to the 4th. It's also easier just to kind of to visually see I have 3 in one group and 4 in another. And then that means my answer is going to be x to the 7th. Simplifying it, I should only have x to whatever power it is. So the next one, the 4 is written out once. And then we have 4 y's. And then I write out 3 and 2 y's. And remember, we are multiplying. So 4 times 3, that has not changed. You've been doing that for quite some time. And then I'm going to count up how many y's total that I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's going to be 12y to the 6th power. So I'm going to have you try a couple of those, and then there will be the answers posted. You're just going to check those. I want to look when we have more than one variable. So coming down here, we have 6y squared. So 6 times y times y. And then I have 3, and I'm just writing out the y once because my exponent, remember, if there's no exponent, it's just a 1. And then x gets written out 6 times. To simplify, I am multiplying my numbers. 6 times 3 is 18. I'm not going to mark it wrong if you don't do them alphabetically, but I'm going to do them alphabetically. In the end, that does help us out. I'm going to count up how many x's that I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's going to be x to the 6th. And then I count up how many y's I have. 1, 2, 3. Y to the 3rd. And that's, again, my simplified. I don't have my x's in more than one spot. My numbers are all in one number out front. They're multiplied together. I'm trying to think. Looks like I'm going to do this one over here that has 2 variables and looks maybe like it could be a little bit more complicated. So expanded form first because that's the requirement. And then expanded form of the next one. And we are multiplying. So that means I'm multiplying my numbers. 4 times 2 is 8. When I multiply my x's, I count up how many I have. And x to the 4th is how I write it because it's the same as saying x times x times x times x. It's just, again, simplified. And then if I count up all my y's, I have 6 total. So it's 8x to the 4th, y to the 6th. If I have things like the one down on the bottom here that has this negative number in the parentheses, a lot of times we will put negative numbers in parentheses so that you know it's still a multiplication and that it's not a subtraction. So this is just 7 times x times x times x times y. And then negative 2 is written down once because my exponent is on the x. 7 times negative 2, so positive times a negative is a negative, so I get negative 14. Count up my x's, I have a total of 7, and then I just have that one y. It's not wrong to put a 1 on the y, whatever works for you. So you're trying out the other ones, check on the classwork because you will see that again, and then seeing if you're able to come up with any patterns. If you don't, it's not a huge deal, but we will also be talking about that in class.